Welcome back to the
Why God Podcast.
Why God Podcast.
I'm Josiah.
I'm Isaac. And hey, welcome back to another episode of the Why God Podcast, where today we are discussing part 2 of our goals series. But what's so important about these goals? They're godly, bro.
If they're not goals from God, then they're not godly goals.
That makes a lot of sense now that I think about it. So,
and if they're not godly goals, should we even do them in the first place? But we talked about last week getting the plans from God, getting your goals from God, and setting up a big goal. I was preaching about it this week, and I didn't really have a clear understanding of it in my mind until I was going through it. But there's 3 parts of the plan, which is like the goal is the destination, the plan, which is the in-between of where you are and the destination, and then preparation is what you're doing right now in this season in order to get to the goal. Oh my gosh.
This is like a nice little past, present, future. Well, that's not actually. Sort of.
Kind of like a trinity.
Sort of, yeah. I like it.
Heresy moment, but
it's a trifecta of goaling it up.
But we were saying that you have to start out with a big goal, something that's not too easy, where you can get it done today or this month, but it's not too hard where you're just gonna lose faith on it. Like your goal shouldn't be save up for retirement. It should be something in the near future of like maybe 5 or 10 years, something to keep you going, get you motivated.
So then, what should be a good goal for somebody who is scared of retirement and does want to have a good? What would you say to them?
How old are they?
They're like our age. Okay, imagine somebody our age, and they're like, their only goal in life is to be like, oh, I don't know, I just want to be retired. What would you say to them?
I would say that's good to have in mind, but maybe before focusing on retirement, focusing on getting a job right now.
Luke's not actually retiring from something.
You can't retire without money. I mean, you can, but maybe not happily.
Yeah, bro, I know a lot of people who are retired. Anyways.
Okay.
Tell us.
So today we're going to talk about how to break that big goal into smaller goals, and we're going to talk about how to make those small goals into smart goals.
Making a plan.
So my question to you, Isaac, why do we need to break our big goals into small goals?
Why do we need to break our big goals into small goals? Oh, yeah. So, the interesting thing about that, no. I'd say we need to break down our big goals into small goals because in order to get to, I don't know, the top of a mountain, you have to go up each step. Yeah. Or it's not just like you're just going to be like, okay, my goal is to have all this money for retirement. Yeah. Like, you have to have other plans in place. Little thresholds. What are they called? Milestones. Checkpoints. Like things to where, you're not just appearing at your goal, which, sometimes people can. But realistically, logically, majority of the time, there's a step-by-step progression. So that's why, you need smaller goals to get you there. Because, if you do want to save up for retirement, if that's the goal, if that's the ultimate goal, then, like you said, you got to have a job first. And maybe your goal isn't to have a job. Your goal is to be done having a job. But you need these little victories.
I agree.
Unless you were asking about just, like, small goals unrelated to big goals.
Oh, no. You hit the nail perfectly. For example, maybe as a viewer, your goal is to get $1 million. But if you just go through life with just that in mind, without doing any work, without any plan, you're likely not going to get $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you win the lottery, or maybe if you I don't know, money launder or something. But
come on,
practically, you have to make smaller goals.
Mm-hmm.
A part of getting $1 million is maybe getting a good job. Maybe it's starting a business. Maybe it's going out and selling all these things, little by little, getting $1 million. It's not just something all at once. But when you have a really big goal, even a 5 to 10 year plan, it's still a lot to think of in your head at once.
Oh yeah.
But it isn't until you start putting it down on paper, until you start speaking it out loud to your friends and family. And I don't mean like a name it and claim it, but I'm saying that when you put it on paper, it becomes real, because you become accountable to the things that you the things that you project.
Indeed.
And then when you become accountable of the small goals, and you start to build that plan of how to get to $1 million, then you start to take the steps and you start to do the things you need to do.
Yeah, that's big time. That reminds me of a story. No, when I was that's like even anything. When I was a little kid and I was trying to learn how to skateboard, and it was a pride thing, and that's why I know.
Yeah.
Cause so we would go skating. I would go skating with my friends and stuff, and they had a little half pipe, and so it was like, you drop in and you do all these tricks and whatever. But all I knew how to do was drop in, and so like I would just drop in, and then I would hit the coping on the other side, and then I would just fall over. And I was like so frustrated because my goal was obviously to be like good at skating and do tricks and like drop in and go straight into like all the good stuff, because that's what I was doing. I was seeing everybody else in that place. But then I like my cousin, he would always tell me, he's like, just start on the flat part and just start pumping back and forth, and then try the tricks like underneath the coping. Like you don't have to be up here where everybody else is. Like just start on the bottom and start pumping in baby steps. And like that was honestly the most humbling thing for me that makes me think of this so much, because I would always the whole time, that whole night when he told me that, I was like, nah, I'll do it once I get this one trick. Because that was my goal. It was to get that trick. And I just couldn't get it. And then at the very end of the night, like where everybody's going home and stuff, I'm like, okay, let me just try it. And I'm trying it. Trick. First time. First try, too. I'm just like, freak.
Was anybody watching?
No, but I was like, and it was just a rock and roll. So if you know anything about a rock and roll, it's like, but I was like, man, I should have started at the beginning. In the beginning, when I had all this time, then I could have done it, and then I could have tried dropping in and doing it, because it's just like I wasted my time by thinking that I had to just achieve my big goal right away, and I couldn't just start small and start by pumping in and out. Didn't have to drop in, didn't have to go straight into the trick, but just getting a better feel for it. And so, I mean, makes perfect sense for me, because it's a humbling thing to have smart goals almost. I mean, not smart goals, small goals, which are smart goals, I guess.
Yeah.
But like, just start small, I guess.
And how does that apply to your life right now?
Dude, in my life now, I always think of that. Like, whenever I have a big goal, and I'm like, oh, I gotta do this, or I want to do this, I literally always think, I'm like, maybe I just gotta start at the bottom. Maybe I just gotta do little baby steps, and then the ball will get rolling, and then I'll get more comfortable, and then I'll get better at all this stuff. But literally any time now when I set a goal, I'm like, okay, what are the little things I gotta do first so that I can get good at whatever it is I'm trying to do. Not even get good at just any goal you're trying to achieve. If it's like we have some of our friends too who are like, they want to run a marathon, like 26 miles eventually. But I get tired at 4 miles. Yeah. You shout out track stars, but I get tired at 4 miles. So it's like I'm like, bro. And dude, I just came from the park with Josh. He was just running for like 2 hours straight.
Yeah.
So shout out Josh, but it's like you gotta start somewhere. Like no marathon runner is just gonna get up off the couch and just run 26 miles. Like even though even though you're like, okay, I can maybe make it for 6 minutes, I can maybe run for 6 minutes, full sprint or whatever, then maybe just push yourself to 7 minutes. It might be embarrassing. It might be like, oh, other people can run faster. Other people are farther ahead, or oh, I'm trying to achieve a goal that other people have achieved 100 times over already. I would say something really helpful is to get rid of pride, is to not be prideful about like the goals that you have set and the process that it takes to get there, because it might not be the most flashy on your way up. It might not be the most like, oh my gosh, they're doing such a crazy thing. It's like, no, I'm just like doing my baby steps. But eventually, like, there's a compound interest on it. But even like, I don't know where I was going with this, but it was something, it's definitely along the lines of like, you know, if it's a God-sized dream or you have a calling on your life to get this goal, like, it doesn't mean it has to look like super crazy or something. And if it's a God-sized dream and it's not just about you and being famous and having riches, because the Bible does talk a lot about how dangerous money can be if we love it. So if it's between you and God, then it doesn't matter who's watching, or it doesn't matter what other people have accomplished, even if they've accomplished so much greater. Like, if it's between you and God, you got to know and you got to trust and you got to believe that it's for the good, it's for the kingdom, it's for all this stuff, and He has blessings for you. And a lot of people sometimes are like, no, like, sometimes it's just our goal to suffer. It's like, well, God wants us to, like, no prosperity gospel, but God wants us to be blessed. He wants to bless us. He wants to give us life in abundance. Whatever that means. Maybe that means heaven. Maybe that means it's only in heaven. Maybe it means it's here on earth. Maybe it's a testimony of His goodness. Who knows? But that's why it's like, it's way better to trust Him in the little things than to be like, no, I have to be here because this is where everybody else is. Like, comparison is the thief of all joy. And so it's, I would say a huge aspect of goal setting is the patience of the process, the humility that it takes in the process, and like that just makes the small goals even more important.
Yeah. I would say one of my goals is social media. And
he's just going for the ferret. No, I'm just joking.
And it's super hard when you're first starting out on social media. And I'm like currently running like 8 different accounts. And it's always the hardest in the beginning because you have 0 followers, you have 0 viewers, just like now. But
shout out if you're watching this video.
And it might take a year. Hopefully you get to 1,000 by the end of the year.
That would be crazy.
But that would be crazy.
That would be crazy.
But once you start to build up momentum, once you start to get the pace going, it becomes easier and easier and easier. And eventually, hopefully, it's going to pay off one day.
Yeah.
Like, maybe not all of our goals or maybe not all of our business ideas will work out or become the $1 million idea. And maybe not all of our social media accounts will blow up and become super popular. But eventually, if you keep on working and you keep on working and putting like your time and energy and your God faith into something, it's gotta be centered around God. But eventually, something's gonna kick in if you keep on working. But you don't just do that all at once, like I said, and it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of time. Like for me, I have to post every day. I swear, I edit like 7 different things every day. And
it's just a Dwayne The Rock Johnson fan page, by the way, guys. No,
really
I'm just joking.
And yeah, even when I go to bed, I really shouldn't do this, but I just edit videos before I sleep because
that's crazy.
Otherwise, I'll just be scrolling through Instagram anyway. So why not just do something productive? But it takes time, it takes patience, and it takes discipline to keep on doing these things. But I think maybe this is a stretch where I'm taking this, but maybe having a big goal without any plans or actions to get there is just as bad as the servant that dug his talents in the ground. And because what I'm saying is, like, when the master gave his servant's talents or bags of gold. He says, go out and make more, like multiply it.
Yeah.
But the one servant that dug the money in the ground, and he didn't even put it in the bank for interest, the master was disappointed. More than disappointed, he was like furious because he didn't do anything with it. And I think that's kind of relatable in our situation. Is if we have this big dream, even if God gives us this big dream, but we don't have the plans or actions or will to do the work, to have the patience, to have the discipline, then it's probably going to work out the same way it did for the servant that dug his money in the ground.
Yeah. And where is it in the Bible too? I have no idea. I'll Google
Maybe
it.
Matthew or something.
But it's in Matthew, but there's another one. It might be right after this parable. I don't know where it is, but it's saying something like whoever hears God's words and his teaching
Let him hear.
but doesn't do any of it is like a fool who looks at his reflection and then walks away and instantly forgets what he looks like.
Yeah.
Like it's like we get all hyped up, and I do this all the time. Like we get hyped, I get so hyped up, I'm like, yeah, this is my goal, this is my dream, this is what I'm gonna do. And then I already start imagining myself once I have achieved that goal. I'm like, yes, I'm gonna have like,
it's always at 3 o'clock in the morning.
yeah,
too.
bro. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna have muscles, whatever it is. Like that was me, like as a little kid, bro. 6th grade, YouTube, how to get 6-pack abs in 1 week, like just whatever random stuff. But it's like, if you just, and it's not. I mean, I wouldn't say it's heretical because it's with anything, but in this context, God is like, anybody who listens to my words and doesn't like do anything about it, doesn't act on the faith, is like a fool who looks at themselves in the mirror and then doesn't. And what I'm saying is we get so hyped up, and I hype myself up in my brain about whatever, anything, even God. Like maybe it's not even goals, or maybe it is. Maybe you're at a church camp and you're just like, this is for kids especially. So if you're an adult though, like goals are still equally important. But maybe you go to a camp, maybe you go to a church service, maybe whatever it is, and you just feel the presence of God, and you're like, yes, this is so amazing. I'm going to do these new things in my life. Those are some big goals because it's a whole change. It's a whole 180 or whatever. And you're like, I'm going to do this. But then you walk away and you instantly forget. Why? Because there's no discipline. There's no smaller goals to help you get there. There's no, like, people will be like, oh my gosh, I'm a Christian now. Like, I'm going to cut out all these things in my life, or I'm going to like stop doing drugs. Like, but then you still hang out with all your friends who do drugs.
Yeah.
It's like maybe a small goal would be to spend less time with that community and maybe put yourself in a more uplifting community. Like it's those small goals that help you remember your face when you look in the mirror. Remember what the word says. It's like write it down so you always remember. And things like that is like sometimes we just live for the hype of the dream, of the goal and the vision, but we never really put it into practice. That's why, that discipline is so important. And the discipline becomes even easier when you have these little milestones and steps, because then you are taking just one stair at a time to get to the top, rather than just be like trying to just climb for the roof from the ground.
You know, when we think about our big dreams and our big goals, and even if we don't accomplish our big dreams and our big goals, it makes me think of that quote where if you shoot for the moon and you miss, you fall upon the stars.
Come on,
and in our case, even if we don't have our dreams come true, we'll still be in the right direction. We'll be in the ballpark of the things that we want.
100%.
But I think as if I was watching as a viewer, I was like, what goals do you have in mind? What goals what should I make? Like maybe if you're younger, maybe your goal is to get your first car. That was mine a couple years ago. But in order to get well, my car now is broken. But in order to get a car, if that is your big goal, maybe your little goal is to save up $100 a month. Maybe it's to I don't know, get allowance, cut some grass.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
You gotta make those smaller goals.
Mm-hmm.
So you have progress.
Mm.
But I think another aspect that maybe you can touch on next is having smaller goals or having little checkpoints help you to move forward when things aren't going your way and when things when your plan isn't working out well. And I think you can relate that more to like our bigger walk with God, where we're on our journey with God and sometimes we mess up, or we're on our walk with God and it seems like God let us down. Why'd you let this person die? Why'd you let all this bad stuff happen? But if you have those checkpoints or those times where you remember that God is in your life, it goes back like, hey, even though I'm suffering right now, God was with me back then, so why wouldn't he be with me right now?
Yeah.
So it gives you times and moments to reflect on the things that you've been through. And that helps you get through your goals, your dreams, and it helps you get through life in general.
Heavy.
Your thoughts?
I would say I'd say we see that a lot, especially in when even the goals sometimes aren't set by us. And maybe this is another conversation we gotta have. Because what about goals? I don't know if you'd call them goals. Goals that aren't set by us. Like we're praying to God and we're like, God, I want to do this with my life. And he's like, are you sure you don't want to be a missionary right now? You're like,
yeah.
Oh, shoot, wait. What do you mean? He's like, I want you to go here and do this. And you're like, that's not my goal. That's your goal, God.
Yeah.
But he has these things that he might want you to do and these impressions on your heart that are just like, I don't know. That's what they are. Impressions, callings, whatever the word people want to use for them. And you're like, what? That is so weird. Like, why would you call me to this?
Yeah.
And then especially then in those moments, like, sometimes there might be open doors, but it doesn't mean it's a clean, straight path full of no obstacles,
Yeah.
And so it's like, when we come to those obstacles and stuff, knowing that it's from God, knowing that things are from God, knowing not just the God-given dreams, but the ones where we're really trusting God with them, where we're like, this is only possible with you, God, and all this stuff where you're trusting him with them, or he's giving it to you, or whatever it might be, that you can have that faith and that hope, which is such a strong thing to keep you going, that, knowing that, it's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult, and you can persevere, you can push through. I mean, and that's like the whole hope of the gospel. Like when everybody's getting freaking tormented and persecuted, is there like there's still the hope of heaven. Like, obviously it's not easy, it's not good, but your main goal was to love people and to love God and preach the gospel, and you're doing it. And you know what? Your reward is dying physically. But there's this hope of life and everything.
It doesn't relate to goals though.
I bet it does.
All right, I'll just go for it.
Let's hear about it.
When Jesus was talking about his own death, and like for example in Matthew when he says, if you want to follow me, take up your cross. Or I forget what he says, but he says, take up your cross, follow me. And when he's saying that, Jesus is saying that he himself, Jesus, is going to die on the cross. But he's also telling the disciples that you're going to die as well. Your
cross. You have a cross.
And there's that other verse we were talking about last week with goals, but it also relates to our religious lives too, of counting the cost. Those who build a house, they don't just I forget what they said. They don't just build it, but when you build a house, you count the cost first. And what the verse is talking about is that when you become a Christian, when you want to give your life to Jesus, you have to count the cost. Saying, are you willing to go through all this suffering? Are you willing to, even to the point of death, to follow me? And in our lives, a lot of us, we don't have to endure any of that. But when he is telling the disciples these stories, that you have to count the cost to follow me.
He is basically telling them.
He is telling them that You guys are going to die.
You know what's going on, man.
You guys know what I'm about to be put through.
You know,
and that's the same thing you're going to be put through. And that also applies to the cup of suffering. When Jesus is in the garden, he praying to God and says, take this cup from me. The cup represents, sacrifice. It represents suffering. And the Bible says, whoever takes this, like, to take of this cup, to share of this cup. This cup is my blood, but this cup is my suffering. So if you share within the body of Christ, if you share this cup, then the disciples, you better be ready, because it's coming for you too. But with all the suffering comes all the blessings of heaven and being glorified by God.
Yeah. So you do count the cost. It's like, I always would think about this too when I was little. I'd be like, 70 years pain, eternity pleasure, or the other way around. But you can look at it so simply like that, but it really is. It's like, well, you can't just be like, I choose Jesus today, but then not choose him at all with your actions or anything you do, especially when it comes to all the goals and stuff. But it's even like a small goal, which I don't know if some people would consider it small. But not in the terms of like small and insignificant, but as in lesser than the main goal. If the main goal is to love and follow Christ, then the small goal has to be to pick up our cross. And so it's like, in a way, you are openly choosing death. And not death to self, death to... Or you're openly choosing persecution. You're openly saying yes to all the things that God promises is going to happen for the Christians. But it's because you are so dedicated to your big goal that even if your small goal looks like the complete opposite. Because if you look at it and you're like, okay, to follow God means to have eternal life. But my small goal means I die and I suffer. But it's like, what? And that's the thing where God is so... crazy, bro.
Oh, and another one I was thinking of is when Jesus tells the disciples, whoever loves their life will lose it.
Yep.
But whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. So again, he's telling them, you guys are going to die. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. Because I'm going first.
Come on. Yeah, that's the best part about it. It's like, especially with that, the biggest goal, following Christ. Being like Jesus, imitating Christ, is that we are imitating Christ. We aren't setting the path for Jesus. It wasn't like they're like, Jesus, we're gonna hang you on this cross, and Peter was like, no, I'll go first.
He definitely did not do that.
He was like, oh, I don't know that guy. Who? Jesus? What are you talking about? It was Jesus who took the first steps.
The gardener?
Literally. I mean, there was a Simon of Cyrene, but Jesus was carrying the cross the whole way first.
Yeah.
Like, all this stuff was Jesus paving the road so that we had the blueprint to follow. And that's where it's, like, dangerous because, cults, they fall for so many things. And they're like, we're the first to do this. And it's like, well, you shouldn't be. Like, God already did all the stuff. He already did the suffering part. Like, we suffer with him in his suffering. We die with him in his death. And we are raised to life again in his resurrection. Like, that's in Corinthians and Romans and probably the Gospel. No, not the Gospels. But, it's riddled throughout the Bible. It's like we are a new creation because he was a new creation first. Amen. And that's just the words. Don't get caught up in the words. But, like, it's all this stuff is when it comes to goals, too. And life, if it is a God goal, you got to know and you got to trust that God goes before you and behind you and beside you. And so that's just that's the comfort and peace of God that surpasses all understanding, TBH, is that no matter what it is, the goal is you got to know God's been there and he is there and he's with you in it. And so a lot of people think too, like, you're like, oh, God's just only at the top. Like, he's only where he's only where there's success in the social
Yeah.
media. He's like, no, bro, he's probably there when you're editing too.
Mm.
And so it's like, but that's the thing too, is a lot of people invite God into their big goal, but they never invite him into their small goal. I do that all the time. I'm like, God, I know you want me to do this, but I'm just going to do this. Like Abraham, he's like, I'm going to go to the promised land, but I'm going to tell the Pharaoh that this is my sister and not my wife. And then God's like, what the heck, bro? And you know, all this stuff is like, is so often like we were like, okay, God, this is promised, but I'm going to do it my own way in getting there. But you got to trust that God is in even the small details.
Yeah.
Micro and macro God.
I guess you can say
Come on.
God goes before us.
Dude. That's it. Thanks for coming to the Why God podcast.
That's all I have for tonight. No.
God goes before us.
But I like what you said, that your small goals have to... God has to be in your small goals. And my advice for when you create your small goals out of your big goals, you have to make sure that your small goals align with your big goals. Like I was saying to the kids, if your big goal is to get into college one day, your small goal shouldn't be being the most successful drug dealer. You know?
What if you want to go to the School of Hard Knocks? For college.
The jail?
Maybe that's the best college there is.
I mean, if your goal is to get ripped one day. But yeah, your small goals need to align with your big goals. Otherwise, you're going in a direction opposite of where you want to go. And in our lives, and I want to get to this in another podcast down the line, is that how we live right now should be a reflection of the person we want to be in the future. So if our small goals is a reflection of our big goals, then how we live right now should be aligned and a reflection of our smaller goals. And it should all point back to God. Because if your values right now isn't your values in your big goal in your future, then you're probably disobeying God in some type of capacity. But yeah, your small goals got to align with your big goals. Any other thoughts before we move on?
Wow. No, that's good. What else you got for us?
All right. So break down big goals into small goals. Break down big goals into small goals. But your small goals should be SMART goals. And I know for many people in high school, you've heard of the term SMART goals. Now, if you don't know, SMART goals is an acronym for your goals have to be specific, measurable, attainable,
relevant,
and timely. So we'll start with the first one. Your goal has to be specific.
Yes.
What does that mean?
I think that's one of the oceans, right?
Yeah.
The Pacific Ocean.
Yeah.
That's where Hawaii is. Dude, we made it. No.
First step down.
Specific, dude. I would say that means something along it not being the most vague possible goal that you could set.
Yeah.
It's like someone's like, oh, I want to be strong. It's like, what are you gonna do? It's like, get strong. It's like, no, you should have a plan.
Yeah.
Some specifics, if you will.
What does it even mean to be strong? You know?
Oh, yeah. Set the definitions for yourself. Like, not even the goal, just define it better.
Yes.
Determine the relationship, if you will.
Yeah. You have to be specific. And specific is like maybe more niche. Smaller than maybe your small goal. Or way smaller than your big goal. That doesn't even make sense.
Smaller than your big goal.
But it needs to be... Well, listen to the other one, attainable. If you make it specific...
No, going ahead.
If you make it specific enough where you can have a grasp of it in your mind, then you're more likely to achieve it, and you're more likely to do the work to get to it.
Well, actually, low-key, looking at specific, I think it goes along with measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely all at once.
They really do.
Which, low-key specific, having a specific goal sets it up perfectly. Because, like, back to the marathon people, like, if you're, like, 26 miles, you can be like, this week, for my small, SMART goal, I'm going to run 6 miles in under this time. You can measure it by the time, by the distance, by the speed. It can be attainable because it's not 26 miles. It's just 6. It's just a portion. And it's relevant because you're running. Yep. And you want to be a better runner. But it's like you know specifically what the distances you want to get good at running for.
Yeah.
How you can get there because you're like not just the goal is to run 6 miles now and do it in this time. It's maybe I'm going to set myself up and maybe you need some better shoes and socks.
Yeah.
Like maybe you need these little things. So now you have an even littler goal to go down to Ross and get yourself a pair of running shoes that is in your shoe size, which is relevant and timely because you're like, this week I'm going to do that. This week I'm going to do all these things. And so like having the specifics is going to set you up for everything else.
I really like how you clarify that. So specific, put a number to it. If you're running, make your goal
qualitative.
A distance. If you're reading, make it an amount of books or an amount of pages. Make it somewhere where you can keep track of it, which leads to our next one. Your goal has to be measurable. And I really like this one because I enjoy looking at analytics. Especially with social media, it shows you a whole bunch of numbers, how much followers you have, how much people drop off, how much people swipe away, and I understand now why Facebook collects so much information about you behind your back. It's because with with enough information, you can predict how someone is gonna live their life.
Ugh.
And if these companies can predict your next move and or the things that you like, the things that you want in your life, the things that you want to buy, and they can advertise to you, and it's just easier to keep you on their platform,
dude.
Which is it's
actually
cool,
terrifying,
but it's also scary at the same time.
Wait, low key, a part of me wants to. I want to like this. This is just sheer motivational speech now. This isn't very godly, I guess, but I want to be. This is my new life motto: to be unpredictable to Facebook, so they never know my next move.
You should probably get rid of your phone then.
Bro, I got a charge. I'll tell you after the podcast. I got a charge for $5 from Facebook. What's that about?
Wait, what? Like ads or? Like...
I don't know, but I'm down $5.28. Anyways,
your goals have to be measurable, and it has to be measurable because how do you know if you got to your goal if you don't know where you're at? Like I was saying, if you're lost in an avalanche and there's snow above you, you can't just dig in any direction because you might dig downwards. You have to realize where the gravity is going and then dig the opposite direction. And you can track yourself. Maybe if you're in an avalanche, you don't know the distance, but you know which way you're going.
Yeah. I mean, that's good. Like you just know your direction. What's next?
Attainable.
See, now they all segue perfectly too, because like you said, knowing your direction, now you know what direction you should go into.
Yeah.
And when you know the direction you're heading in, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like running a race. Just like,
that's my example too.
It's like running a race. When it's attainable, like when the finish line is over there, every step you take, you're like, whoa, it's getting closer. Like when you can see when you can see the success, when you can see the finish line, when you can see the goal being achievable, when you set the checkpoints, like maybe you don't see the finish line goal, but if you have all these small goals, you can see where the next step is at least, and you know to get there, and you know how to get there. And so if you start running this direction, you know like, oh, this isn't good. If you start hanging out with the wrong people and they're taking you in this direction, you're like, wait a second, this isn't attainable if you guys like if I'm trying to break these addictions and all this stuff and you guys are still dabbling in that area. No shame to whatever you choose to do in your life, but I have these specific goals set for my life and I can measure them by getting to this place and it's attainable for me, but gotta bring up that sacrifice and discipline again and zero in and focus down that line.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
I love the race, the marathon metaphor, because it's so relatable to having checkpoints, or especially when I'm running, or I think mostly for guys this is a thing. But when you're running and you're really tired, sometimes you'll look at the lamppost ahead, and then you'll say, if I don't make it to that lamppost before 10 seconds, I'm gonna die. And then you just start running as fast as you can. But then you do that to the next lamppost.
Yeah.
And you just do
I
that.
can keep going.
And then you do it with every lamppost until you're finished. And at the start, you're tired, you're dying, you're getting your adrenaline up. But now you've gone so far, so long, you build up endurance, you have a runner's high, and now it's a little bit easier. And you start hitting these goals faster and faster, and it's more of a breeze. Dude. And you get more done.
Come on. Shamefully, I'm that guy that's like, when I get to that lamppost, I'm going to walk.
I do that too.
When I reach this corner, I'm going to walk, and then I'll start running once I hit the next lamppost. But then that does give you, that's like, I'm going to run.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. But that's the checkpoint. So good.
But walking is still better than being idle.
Preach, Pastor.
So even though you're going at a slower pace, you're still farther than you would be if you didn't make attainable goals.
At least give it to the bank and collect the interest, bro. Sheesh. Better to be moving than to be stationary.
Clip that. All right, our next one. Your goals have to be relevant, which kind of ties with being specific because.
Come on, Bessa!
I wasn't making a point, but I'm just saying that's kind of funny because it does tie in together. But where I think this relates to big goals is that if your smaller goals is not relevant with your big goals, then what's the point?
Yeah,
well, if you have too many diverse goals, then it's not going to be focused enough to build up one thing.
That's how I feel every day, actually. I gotta start downsizing, huh?
I'm a hypocrite with this too.
This might be relevant and timely. That probably is the hardest part for me when it comes to the goals, especially relevance. Well, not that I don't know what I want to do. I just sometimes disperse too much, like you're saying. Like I'm like, oh, I should do this, or I should do this, or I should do this, I should do this. It's like biting off more than you can chew. And sometimes, which I would give myself advice, if anybody's like me, what I would say is to take the baby steps, one thing at a time, one bite at a time. You're gonna have, and I see this on the social medias and on the motivational stuff, but I never believe it. And it's the saying where it's like, you will have time to do the next thing. Even like family has told me this, and teachers and stuff. They're like, if you focus right now and do this one thing that you have to do, you will have time to do the next thing. But in my brain, I just don't believe that. I'm like, no, I have to do both of them. And then I end up doing neither of them because I'm too focused going back and forth. So what I would say is to take the thing that is the most important one, the most important of the options that you have. Focus your energy on that one first. And then whatever your other SMART goals that you just can't depart from, to do those, go down the line, a list of importance. The relevance and importance of it. The importance of the thinking. What is the most relevant, I guess, maybe. Or maybe not even most relevant, but just most important. But two with that, going back to that shoot for the moon, land among the stars thing, is, I felt that personally in my own life, with jobs, with even goals, not even goals that I've set, but things in general, where it's like, I work so hard at this, and I do these things, and then I don't get the goal that I thought I was going to get, but now I'm left with all these skills that are really beneficial and applicable to other places in life, and able to apply them to whatever next goals I have and things. And it's like, and I know we just keep talking about physical stuff, but that's where the best analogies come from. But when I was when I was a sophomore and I was surfing in this contest, I like surfing. If you don't know, hey, I'm Isaac. I like to surf. So I was surfing in this contest. But the thing was, the whole summer before the surf contest, I was trying out for football because I wanted to play football. And so I was conditioning all summer, conditioning, lifting weights, doing all this stuff. Cardio was great. Everything was great. But I was small and scrawny, so I got cut from the team. I was so bummed. But the next week was the surf contest. And I hadn't surfed that whole summer because I was just so focused on football and like, oh, this is my goal. I want to be cool. I want to like impress people. And there was no humility really. I was a high schooler. What can I say? But I was like, oh, I want to do this. I wanted to be a football player and all this stuff. And I'd conditioned. My body was in great shape. And then when the surf contest came, dude, I won the surf contest and I accredit it to football training. Like I didn't surf the whole year. But it was literally because I had those small goals of being in shape and being physically fit that I think gave me just the edge that I needed when it came to surfing. Like I had known how to surf, but when the muscles were connected and the flexibility was there, it just made it easier. And so it's like, maybe that was my OG goal, but then when I had this goal, I was already further on this path. And so that's something too. I don't know how it completely I don't know how it's completely relevant to relevance. But everything, working hard pays off in general.
Yeah.
Like, because if I had just sat down and be like, oh, I'm going to get cut from the team, like, there's no point. Like, then I would have been fat and trying to surf. Like, it could have been a different story. But it's like working hard just in general, at least it teaches you that discipline. If nothing ever sticks, at least you have now the discipline to work hard or the knowledge to invest in what the Lord gives you. Invest in whatever doors open up in front of you. And so, yeah, relevance.
Man, there's so much to go off of that. I like that word about discipline. Even if your previous dreams or goals don't work out, it gives you the discipline. And you need discipline to get through life. Because there will be times where you're suffering, you're not motivated, you're tired, but you still have to do the work. You still have to get up every morning and go to work. And, maybe if you have a family, to support your family.
Mm-hmm.
But you need discipline to get through all of that. And I just forgot what I was gonna say. But I guess in my case for gaining skills, in 2020, I was trying to do. I think it was before 2020, but I was trying to start a clothing brand off of my meme account, and it definitely flopped. And that's because I wasn't a designer. I had no artistic skills, and I really liked building the website. But now, and the reason that I closed the website was because it cost more money to keep it up than it was bringing in, which was like zero. But even though that failed, that gave me skills to do what I'm doing now, or trying to achieve the goals that I'm doing now.
Come on.
So even though it seemed like a waste back then, because it was relevant to my goals, it helped me in the future when I'm more prepared to do those types of things, when I have more money to do those types of things. So it all ties back.
It does. Everything's connected. And that's the thing too. It's important to see those all holistically and that they are connected and not get caught up in the details of setting your goal. Like, don't let setting your goal hold you back from achieving your goal and doing it. You're like, oh shoot, I wasn't this disciplined today, or oh shoot, like maybe this seems too unattainable, so you're like refining. It's like, no, just if it's good, like get out there and do it and go and put in the work and put in the discipline. Like maybe you mess up a day, or maybe you aren't where you thought you would be. Maybe you failed in something because you set it too high or whatever it is, like, don't let that be the reason you give up. Just adapt and overcome and keep going. Like, roll with the punches is something I would say. Is like, they're going to come. The obstacles are there, and they're guaranteed. And it's not like we're going to overcome every challenge first try. And so it's like a part of endurance and a part of striving in general is knowing that you're not going to succeed 100% every single time, every step of the way. Like, it's going to be difficult. Like, that means it's going to be hard, and you could probably fail. And so, like, not just the land among the stars part, but, like, just get up, dust yourself off, and keep going. And if you realize, like, oh, maybe this is, like, God telling me no, maybe that's something you got to go back to the drawing board. Maybe that's something you got to take to God and pray about. Be like, God, this was a goal I had, but is this something you don't want me to achieve? Like, is there something else you want me to be striving for? Like, is this not a goal you have for me? And so I hear a lot of people pray that, especially in relationships where it's like, God, if this person is not the right one for me, take them out of my life. And people pray that prayer. I don't know how successful that is. Maybe it really works out. I believe it.
It works.
But it's like, but that means, one, you got to accept it if God takes the person out of your life. Yes. And two, if there's like, you got to trust God through the process. Yeah. You're like, I just prayed the prayer and they're still texting me. It's like, who knows? Maybe in a week, like, things might change. But like, just be aware, be open to what God's plans are. The laugh thing. Like, if you want God to laugh, tell him your plans. Yep. And so, like, but don't be afraid to work hard, keep going, but also be open and aware to signs. If God's like, hey, buddy, you worked hard. I know you will die trying your hardest, and you have the free will to do this. Mm-hmm. But maybe God has something. He's like, I want you to go left instead of right. Yeah. You're like, oh, okay, God. And trusting that that's the best. That God is the smartest. Yeah. The wisest.
I finally remember what I was going to say earlier about discipline. That even though your goals might fail, it gives you discipline. But you need discipline. Because even when the enemy is at your door, when the enemy is like knocking on your door up to your face, trying to tempt you to do things, those are the times where you need discipline to not give in. When Jesus was fasting in the wilderness, like at his weakest, or at his weakest, the enemy came up to him and he's talking to him and he's tempting him. And if the enemy does that with Jesus, what makes you think he's not going to do that with us? I'm not saying that like that's the Satan himself, but there's going to be times where the enemy tries to poke us at our worst moments. I seen an acronym that I really want to put on a shirt. I might take this out because I don't want people stealing it. But
just put it on a shirt right now.
But in the comments it says that that the acronym was HALT. That the enemy attacks you when you're hungry, when you are I just forgot it.
When you are appetite
hungry, lonely. What's the A?
Oh.
I have no idea. I'm not gonna clip that. But the enemy comes at your lowest points, and those are the times you need discipline the most, because those are the times you're not motivated, you're tired, you're hungry, angry,
angry. That
lonely,
makes so much sense.
And tired. Those are the moments that the enemy comes the most, and I got that from the George Janko podcast. If you're ever watching,
he's a stealer.
Big fan. But yes, and I forgot the other thing I was gonna say. But
HALT. Yeah, that's good. So for our last 5 minutes, what I want to ask is about this praying people out of your life. That's crazy. No, I'm just joking. Give us all the tea, bro. I'm curious. No, I'm just joking. You don't I'm just joking.
I was like, what are you talking about? Wait. But before we get to that, we have to go through the last one. Your goals have to be timely. And this goes with being specific and measurable.
Specific and measurable.
Because if you set a time on it, you're more likely to get it done by that time. Or even if you're not done, you're more likely to be more ahead of the game.
Yeah.
More ahead of the curve than what you would be without one.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put a time on it, you're going to speed up.
Yeah, dude. I hate due dates. But it is the best way to get you doing things. Like in school, oh man. Due dates made me so angry. I'm like, I'll get it done eventually. But you don't really get it done eventually if you just keep putting it off. You're like, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. But if like, I can't do it tomorrow. It has to be done by tonight at 11:59 p.m.
Yes.
Like something about sitting down at your computer at 10 p.m. and you haven't written a thing.
It sucks.
And you have like 6 pages to go. Just kicks your brain into overdrive. But it's because you're like, oh, I gotta get this done. The goals and whatever, and all these things. But it really does. It holds you accountable because you know that maybe it's not always the case, but you know that there's a consequence to not having it on time. Maybe you lose 10% of your grade. Yep. Maybe you don't have the money for your retirement. Maybe you have to keep working and you can't retire because you didn't put your thing in. Maybe you can't run the mile, whatever, all this stuff. When the thing passed and then you gotta wait, or maybe you just don't have the satisfaction of achieving your goal by the time that you wanted to achieve it. And I would say, yeah, like timely, it's a very simple one. It's a very obvious one, but it takes the most discipline, I think.
Yeah.
Because, timely doesn't mean like just like, oh, I gotta arrive here at this time. You gotta plan ahead. That's where those other little goals come in. And more little goals. And little goals.
It makes me think of in Revelation when Jesus says, it's not in Revelations, but it does connect. But when Jesus ascends into heaven, he tells his disciples, I'm going to come back soon. Mm. And even though God doesn't put a direct date or time on it, he says, I'm going to come back soon. Mm. So that at every hour of your life, you should be ready. You should be getting prepared for the day that Jesus will come back. Mm. So that you'll be about it every day. Even if he doesn't tell you that day, it's like you have to get ready now. And when you put a time on it, you're kind of saying, oh, I have to be doing something now. You have to be prepared now. Don't know how that lost my train of thought again. But I think
no, you're like always. You gotta be always alert, always ready.
And when you're timely, you're more ready.
Dab on them.
Yeah.
Boom.
That's all we had for SMART goals today. So, any closing remarks?
Man, that was probably the most on schedule we've ever been for a podcast.
I know, it feels a little too short.
Oddly too good. We're too successful at this. You know why?
We're timely.
We set a SMART goal.
We're smart.
We're smart. And that's what is up. And that's it on the why. No, I don't know.
Pride before the fall?
Pride before the fall, dude. Why would you
Pride
say
God.
Why would you say that? Next week, we're just like, no, but I would say, yeah. That's all really good stuff. I'd say, man, I don't know. I feel like we did cover it all. Just work hard, trust God, believe in the gospel, repent, stick to it, bro. You guys got this. And that's all. Unless you had anything? Do you want to pray out?
Yeah. Dear God, thank you for today. I pray over our goals, our plans, our dreams, our preparation, Lord God, that you would be in the midst of it all. Help us to make goals that are relevant and lead back to you in all things and in everything. And just pray over our week, over the viewer, over anyone watching this, Lord God. In your name, amen. On the
Why God podcast. Shoot!